Okay, yeah. Last thing I want to talk about is like the Tom Cruise COVID rant on Mission Impossible 7. Um, yeah, quick. Firstly, amazing rant. It is so cathartic and interesting and just fascinating to hear celebrities yell at people. Like, I don't care if they're their boss, or I don't care if they're like, it's a weird power dynamic sort of thing. I don't really care that much. I'm just kind of like, oh, yeah, that's pretty fair. I'd probably yell. You probably deserve that if you're gonna break COVID rules, especially on a set in Europe. Like, they're in Europe. Europe's fucked. Like, why would you? COVID's you've absolutely destroyed Europe. America, Europe, don't want to go there. Australia, we're nailing it, except for New South Wales, because dirty Northerners. But oh, I don't know what else to say about it. It's sorry, I do know a decent bit. It's on the film sets that I've been in the last few weeks. COVID has been like one of those like weird touch and go sort of things, where yes, COVID, everyone wears masks and does the PPE and sanitizers, and we try and social distance as best we can, but we don't. It's never like the number one thing. Like, it's never like the highest. It's never like the outroast. Everyone lives and dies by the COVID rules. We just sort of like work around it to our comfort. If it's necessary, if it's unnecessary, we make it depending on that. Whereas with with Tom Cruise and his brand, I think honestly I side with Tom Cruise. I think it's very justified that if people are on sets breaking COVID rules, not really paying attention to things, especially when it's just kind of like Tom Cruise is looking at it like this, like he says, like he's talking to producers and insurance companies, like budgets on films have risen by 40% just to accommodate for hand sanitizer, gloves, and masks. It is an insane number of like, the money's insanely risen over that time, and I'm pretty sure that just means we're gonna get a bunch of new films here in Australia, like filming here, possibly even saying they're set in Australia. Could we get Mission Impossible 8 to shoot in Australia again? Like, let's bring back to Mission Impossible 2 sort of things. Um, that's the sort of thing where we're at now, and it's very make or break. And I think honestly, when he says like he's living with the future of the industry, I'm pretty sure that's related to like the HBO Max deal in a way. And for those who don't know, like the Warner Brothers HBO Max release strategy for 2021, for those who don't know, basically Warner Brothers came out a few weeks ago and announced that all of their films will be releasing in cinemas and on HBO Max, which is their streaming service in the US, on the same day. In Australia, we call it binge, and we don't get all the films that come in. It's pretty close to binge. Um, but basically, it's like got all the HBO shows and Warner Brothers stuff and Harry Potter's and superhero and like DC superheroes and all that sort of jazz. And yeah, they've announced that like all their films. So films like Godzilla versus Kong, The Suicide Squad, um, The Little Things, the In the Heights, June. A lot of blanking my mind at the moment, but there's like 17 of them, and they're just all going to cinemas. And that's starting with Wonder Woman 1984 on Christmas. But that's like a really weird. When all these filmmakers sort of like stood up and said, no, we don't want that. We weren't consulted, and we don't really want that. We want to make our films to be seen in cinemas because it's going to hurt the box office for their films. Like, Warner Brothers films are just going to look like they tanked for the entirety of 2021. And I say it's a 1 year release strategy, but really it's just the Netflix release model on steroids of like, they have it playing it in cinema, like at home to compete with Netflix and Disney Plus and Amazon Prime. And then they have it on in cinemas to give it that awards qualifier. And they don't really care about it. I think perhaps the best studio that's doing the studio that's doing the best at the moment is probably Universal, where they have like a 17-day window. So like they had Freaky and Let Him Go, that come out on their days, and then 17 days later they were on iTunes. That's sort of probably the business model that I think it's most appropriate at the moment. The Matrix 4 is included in that, yeah, in the Warner Brothers list. I don't really. I think that's probably put a lot of pressure on the film industry, especially in America and over in Europe. And I think that's possibly what Tom Cruise references when he says he's worrying about the future of the industry. But he's also not wrong. COVID's a massive danger, and a lot of people lost their jobs in the industry over COVID. And I think he's absolutely right for people to jeopardize that, even if they are looking at a screen. For people to jeopardize that, I think a bit of a spray is pretty fair justified to me. Considering we're, first industry out, last industry back in, why would you not be really protective about the fate of the industry, especially when now it's all up in the air? Films are bombing left, right, and center. If you want to put a film out, you're basically saying we're happy to lose money on this.